put in time in that if it's confusing. Okay. All right. So we finished off. With calculating the mean, the median, and the mode of group data. So moving on, they then ask us to calculate the range for this grouped data. All right. Now, the nice thing about this is when it comes to the range particularly, it's the same way that you would calculate the range for ungrouped data. All right. And I've just pasted the table next to us again there. Right. Remember, the range is basically what is the difference between your maximum value and your minimum value, or the smallest value, 100%. Okay. So here, if we look, we see that the minimum value in the midpoint, we're using the midpoints though, okay, is 21. And the maximum value on the midpoints is 31. So we're literally just getting the difference between that, which we know is 10, okay? And that's how we've calculated our range. I'm trying to kind of zoom in, but at the same time, ensure that we can see this table, okay? So that's how we calculate the range. But then we also need to have a look at your variance, okay? Now remember when we did ungrouped data, and I have to keep on referring to this so that you can see the difference, because they can ask you for grouped or ungrouped, okay? So when we did ungrouped data, we had the same formula, but there was no F for the frequency, okay? We had this exact same formula. So here again, what's happening is we're saying, what is the frequency minus the average frequency that we calculated, right? Squared times the frequency. Okay, sorry, I keep saying frequency. Midpoint. What is the midpoint minus the average, the mean, okay, squared times the frequency of each class. Because remember, we have to operate within classes. So here you can see, for the first class, we have 20 to 22, isn't it? Right? And there you can see our frequency is what? What's our frequency? 1. It's 1, okay? And then we know that what is our midpoint? 21. It's 21. What is our mean that we calculated earlier? 26.64. We calculated right at the beginning. Yeah. Okay? Squared. Okay? You do that for the first class, you move on to the second class. What's the frequency in the second class? Can you see it there in the table? It's 3. And then what was the midpoint for that one? 23. 23, all right? So again, as long as you understand your formula, which is provided to you, but again, watch out, because the formula on your formula sheet doesn't have brackets. Remember the mess we made when we did, ungrouped data. We didn't have the brackets, and it gave us a way off answer, okay? So you do the same thing for all the other classes. Once you're done, you total, right, the top part, all right, which should give you 323, okay, and then divide it by the number of variables, which we know is 50. And then your variance should be 6.4633, okay? Right, so that's how we calculate the variance. Guys, if you get this right, the rest will be a breeze for you, okay? Because we know the standard deviation, which is the next thing that they ask, is simply the square root of whatever you have calculated over here, okay? Literally just the square root of whatever we have calculated over there. Okay, trying to make sure that we are recording so we don't miss out on this. Okay, some of you might want to visit this after the test. It's fine. Okay, I think as soon as this lesson is done, when are you guys writing? Next week, what time? When? Thursday. Okay. So you got time, right? You have time. Trust me, when we revise, you'll see that you have time. Okay, but you have to start tomorrow.
So is it like, why did you put the rank
The, remember at the beginning of the question, they said that these values that they gave us, let me use this. Can you see there? It's in thousands. So they dropped off the thousands. Can you see here? So that's why I've done it like that. But if you check in your answer book, it's also, they didn't even bother to put the thousands at the end of it. They just, no, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. Okay. Right. So there, that should be your standard deviation. Then the coefficient of variation. Here I didn't put the formula. It's CV is equals to your standard deviation divided by your, what is this? Can you recall what this? Exactly. It's the mean. Okay. So can you see what I was saying? If you can get your variance right, you home and dry there. Because again, you've got the formula for this. Does that make sense? So just get your formula right. I mean your variance right, and then you should be good. Then number 4, they are asking for the interquartile range. All right. Remember our box. Where can I draw this? Let me do it here. We have 0. Okay. And we have 100. Okay. And remember, this is interquartile. So we're dividing our data into quarters. Okay. Right. 4 equal pieces. Can you see that? We know a quarter is a fourth. All right. So we want our interquartile range. All right. The formula for that is simply Q3 minus Q1. In other words, 75%, because your third quartile, can you see, is going to be 75%, and your first quartile is going to be 25%. Okay, so this is the range that we actually want. Can you see that? This is what we are looking for. So that's why we're saying Q1 minus Q3. All right, or should I actually say Q3 minus Q1? Okay, which is what we got here. 75% minus the 25% will give you that middle 50%. Okay, right. But again, we must remember that we're doing this for grouped data. Okay, so first things first, remember, we need to find the position. How do we do that? This is the formula for, that's not what I'm trying to do. This is the formula for Q1, n divided by 4. So we know n is 50. That's the number of variables we have. So 12 and a half. Where do we find 12 and a half? We're looking for 12 and a half using the cumulative frequency. You have to go back. So yes, you have to go back to the table. And then count. Right? Fortunately, we've already done our cumulative frequency. So all of, the first 4 values, right? 4 within, and then the next 18, or up until 18 values, then falls within the next class. So 12 and a half would fall within this class. Can you see that? Because this class goes all the way up until 18. Okay? So we then go back and we say, okay, it goes back to this formula here. Sorry, the formula, I should have had the formula there. So we say the lower point, right? And then the percentile, position of the quartile, minus the frequency before, cumulative frequency before that class. Okay? So if we go back, we see the lower quartile there is 24, right? I'm going to take it one step at a time. Here, can you see? 24, right? And what was the cumulative frequency of the one before? It was 4, okay? And we said divided by what? What did the formula say? I also don't recall now. Divided by the frequency of k. In other words, the frequency of the first quartile, which we see is this one here, 14, okay? Right? And the positioning of Q1 that we calculated was that 12.4. So can you see? Sorry, 12.5. There's your 12.5, okay? There they said P, K, okay? And then here we have the 14, the frequency for the class that we were looking at, which we identified to be 14, all right? Then times 2, okay? Then if you solve for that, you'll see that your, remember we said, what Q1 tells us that the first quarter of our data is below 25.21. The first quarter of our data is below this value that we've calculated, okay? Then we do the exact same thing for Q3. But now remember that the formula to find your positioning for Q3 is 3n. Remember, it's the third quarter. So 3n divided by 4, okay? And that's obviously giving us this 37.5. So again, to find that class, we need to say, where do we have 37.5? Can you see this only ended at 18, right? So where are we going to find 37.5? So in other words, from 19, 20, 21 is going to fall in the next quartile, since this one only goes up until 18. So from 19 all the way until what? 38. So 37.5 will fall within which class? Within this one. Can you see how we're identifying it? This is the difference between the grouped data and the ungrouped data. Here we have to use the classes. I'm sure you're picking up on that. We're constantly identifying first the classes, then we start looking for either the frequency or the cumulative frequency or the midpoint, depending on the formula. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, we go and do the same thing. And I was going to skip this, but I think let's do it again, just so that it syncs, isn't it? Because it's this. I want to go back. I want to 1 comma. This 25,21, you mean here? This one?
No, before that. No, before the number.
Oh, it's the solving of this. The solving of this that's in brackets times 2. Because can you see this is an equal sign? So if we actually, let's solve it together. Let's go 12.5 minus 4. 12.5 minus 4 divided by 14.
0.61.
And then times 2.
1.21.
Are you seeing? Okay. And then we're just adding it to the 24, as you can see here.
So the 24 comes from the salary column, right?
No. Remember, let's go back to the formula and see. That is the lower bound of the class we're looking at. And we said the class we're looking at is 24 to 26.
So 24 would be the lower bound.
Exactly.
And 26 would be the
Upper bound.
Okay.
All right. Is it making sense, guys?
Yes.
So let's do it again. Let's do it again, but this time for the third quartile. Okay. So for the third quartile, okay, let's go back to the formula for a second, and then we go through this thing together. The lower bound, we established the the class that we were looking at, and it was the very next one, 26 to 28. So the lower bound is 26. So here at L, you're going to have 26. And there, by here, we're going to have the, what are we going to have there?
Q3, which is
37.5, isn't it? What we calculated via the positioning. This is, and then what was the frequency for this? Frequency for that class
20.
is 20. Okay? Then we also need to know what? The cumulative frequency before that. Before the class we're looking at, which is 18. Can you see that? Cumulative frequency. So over here, for Q3, it's going to be 18. This we said is going to be 37. I think my battery's starting to die. Let's put this here. So we said this is 37.5. We said this, the lower bound is 26, isn't it? And we said the frequency here is 20. Okay? And then the width, we know the width for all our classes is 2. Okay? I'm just showing you, if you know what you're looking for, we're just inserting values and calculating. And if we go to our answer there, we see that's exactly what they've done here, exactly what we wrote down. Okay? Can you see that? Then again, here they're just, maybe let me highlight rather. They've simplified what we have before the equal sign. And then our final answer is then 27.95 for Q3. Remember, we are not yet done. In order to find the interquartile range, we know it's the difference between Q3 and Q1, which is what we're now doing here. This is Q3, and this is Q1. And so our final answer is 2.74. Okay. Which two? The class width. How did we get it? Good question. So we come here, we go back to our table, ne? Because this table we keep referring to. And if we look at the width, this here, the difference between your lower bound and upper bound, the difference between 26 and 28, what is it? It's 2, isn't it? So that's how we get that 2. No problem. Okay, right. So here, the mid 90% range. Okay, we had a similar question like this the last time when we were revising activity 3. Okay, but again, that was for ungrouped data. So here, the formula still remains the same to find our positioning. But before I go there, I must explain what's going on. We are basically saying, again, going back to 0 and 100. Percentiles we know are like quarters, but now we're looking at specific percentages. Okay? So here they've said the mid 90% of data corresponds with the range of, in other words, how do we get the central 90%? Okay? It means that we will have 5% over here and 5% over here that we don't want, because we want the middle. This is what we're looking for, all the data points, all the data in here within this range. Okay? So in other words, what we need to do is to get the 5th percentile and get the, what percentile here? 95th percentile. Okay? Because it's 5% before the 100%, isn't it? Does that make sense? And how we then get that range is we're going to say 95% minus your 5%. Can you see that? To get the middle 90%. That's what we're doing. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? How? What? My heart is sinking. Is it that you're tired? When did you start class today? Is your first class? All of you?
No.
You've been here since what time? Okay. No, that's understandable. Okay. But just try to follow the logic. Like I know your brains are tired and this is not the class to be having tired brains. Okay? But it is what it is. Yeah, it's guys, I promise you this thing. Can I be honest with you? I promise you, if you're not practicing, it's late. I don't want to lie to you. Here, if you're not practicing, because you will not be able to make sense of this thing. The only thing I'm telling you now is we know that this is not part of test one, is it? Yeah. So this, do not worry about for now. Because learning unit 1 and 2 is what we need to be worried about. Here I'm obviously just finishing up because we are going to be behind. If I don't do this now, we're going to have trouble. Remember, you have 9 learning units. So imagine if I don't finish learning unit 3 before test week.
So,
yeah.
Before test 1, will we like have
we're going to have it today. Yes. So, and yes, today. Remember I said we're using what? 3. How many sessions are you supposed to be here for?
5.
Oh. 5. You even want more. You even want more. We're supposed to be here for 4 sessions. Okay? But again, you'll see. Learning unit, I wasn't even going to revise learning unit 1 and 2. But it was requested. And people promised that they were going to go and do the past tests. So that as we revise, it's not a thing of me just talking. It's you saying, hey, man, I had a challenge here, and here. Okay, but I'm going to show you guys, if you go and do the revision exercises for learning unit 1 and 2, remember I told you from the beginning, if you just use your workbook, you'll be fine. Honestly, you'll be fine. Especially for test 1, you'll be fine.
So test 1 is only learning unit 1 and 2?
Only 1 and 2. And 1 is what? It's theory. And 2 is only your, forgotten what they're called, but it's just those weightings, changes. It's like this thing. I promise you, if you are confident, which I know confidence is lacking right now, but if you're confident, I could even tell you, if you start next week, you'll still pass. Test 1. Yeah, no, I have to. So don't worry about test 1. I'm going to even tell you what you need to do with test 1. And guys, I'm going to be straight with you. If test 1 goes bad,
it's late.
So I'm only saying that to say you need to make sure that you practice for test 1. Don't roll the dice. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So here, guys, the formula for your percentile is here. Okay. It's the same approach with what we're doing with the interquartile. Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time here because I want to go to the test. I want people to be confident. I always say, I want my students to see the tricks before they start answering the question. But for that to happen, you must practice. I cannot practice for you. Does that make sense? Okay. I wish I could. I wish. Okay. So you're applying the same thing. You get your answer. Remember, firstly, this is going to give us our, first we have to get our positioning. Then when we know our positioning, we know that the first the first class was 1. The second class is 4. Sorry, cumulative frequency is 4. The second class. We're looking for 2.5. Where is the 5th percentile going to fall? Remember, this is 1 to 4 of our data points. We're looking for 2.5. We know this first class only has 1. So where is our 2.5 going to lie? Exactly, within this class. So that's the class that we are going to be using to insert into our formula. Okay? Right? We spoke on how to fill out. This is the lower bound. This is the 2.5 that we calculated up there. The cumulative frequency before. What was the cumulative frequency before? It was the 1. Then we ask ourselves, what is the frequency within the class that we are looking at? Let's go back. Somebody take a picture of this and share it on the group so that maybe we don't have to keep coming back. What is the frequency? The frequency for the class we're looking at is 3, isn't it? This is the cumulative frequency. This is the frequency. Yes, we did. That's where we got the 1 from. We don't get the frequency from the same class. No, we don't. We get the frequency from the class we're in. Okay, and then times the width, which we know is 2, because all our width is 2. Okay, right, you calculate, you're going to get to an answer of 23. You do the exact same thing for the 95th percentile. You get a value of, where is it? Down here, a value of 29. You minus the 2. Can you see? To get the middle 90% range, you minus the 2, which is what I was explaining at the beginning, and you get 6.9. That's your final answer. Okay? Then here, they've just asked us to calculate the 60th percentile. We get our positioning. After getting our positioning over here, which is 30, we go and look which class has 30 in it, because people don't want to share a picture on the group. 30th, we know this only goes up to 18. From 19, 20, 21, 25, all the way until 38 is the next class, isn't it? So that 30 is going to fall within which? This one. Yes, 26 to 28. Okay? And then you come here and you obviously, it's the same formula. Can you see? Same formula as what we've been working with. There's your formula. You insert your values and you're going to get a final answer of 27.2. Okay? Then the last thing they asked you to do is to just make a bar graph. And remember, this is a bar graph of grouped data. Okay? Oh, sorry, this is a histogram, not a bar graph. Remember, bar graph is spaces. Okay? So there, what was our range? What was the class there? 20 to 23, and we only had a cumulative frequency of 1. Oh, sorry, this is actually frequency, based on frequency, not cumulative. Then next, this should not be hard for you guys to put together. Just make sure that you understand whether they've asked for the cumulative frequency or the frequency in the question. And then that you should score your 4 marks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is learning unit 3. Okay. No, we were finishing